Welcome to the Sky Talk Doc podcast, where we navigate life, relationships, and everything in between with thought-provoking curiosity and a touch of grace. Buckle up, Buttercup. This is a flight you won't forget. Before we get into today's podcast and our amazing guest, I just want to tell you, you're not broken. You're just wired for survival in a world that doesn't always feel safe. Maybe you keep people at a distance because deep down you don't feel very lovable, or maybe you overachieve because a part of you believes you're not enough. But that's not weakness. It's your brain doing its best to protect an old wound. But here's the thing. What protected you then might be sabotaging you now. If you're tired of the same arguments, same spirals, or feeling unseen in your relationships, take the 7 Primal Wounds quiz at 7primalwounds.com to find out what your wound is and stop the same crappy patterns, chaos, and relationship conflict today. Dr. Nathan, welcome back to the Sky Talk Doc podcast. Back when I had you on a couple of years ago, we were still Be You, Find Happy, and now we've kind of morphed into this new exciting venture, which has been a lot of fun. And I am just so excited to have you back to talk about really incredible research, truly, that you're doing on the world of oxides, free radicals, nitrous oxide, right? All these different things. And I would love for you to just share with the listeners, again, your backstory, any new stuff that you've been working on. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, well, it's great to be back with you. I can't believe it's been 2 years. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
The world of nitric oxide is moving at warp speeds. I'm hosting an international nitric oxide meeting in Austin in April of next year. So we'll bring all the world's experts together and figure out where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed. I've spent the past 25 years in nitric oxide research. I've got a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. I got a PhD in molecular and cellular physiology from LSU School of Medicine. I trained up in Boston at Whitaker Cardiovascular Institute, and then became a professor of molecular medicine at UT Medical School in Houston. Then went on to Baylor College of Medicine. That was kind of my academic career. I'm now in this new phase of my career, a serial entrepreneur. I've started several companies where we've taken my discoveries and innovations into product technologies. Today we're in drug therapy. We've got a drug for heart disease. We're making a drug for Alzheimer's, and we make a topical drug for diabetic ulcers. So we've gone from nutritional dietary supplement skincare world into drug therapy now, and it's exciting. It's amazing the clinical effects and benefits we're seeing from just giving the body nitric oxide.
Well, particularly, I'm really interested in the toothpaste that you're working on. I know you've been doing some stuff with that, because I've been hearing lately that you can actually remineralize. I mean, you can undo cavities. Is this true? And is this something that is available to like the everyday person just via this toothpaste?
It is now. We've been trying to bridge the gap between dental medicine and regular physicians for years, because there's a known oral systemic link. People with poor oral hygiene have higher incidence of heart attack, stroke, and all-cause mortality. So we have to focus on the oral microbiome and getting rid of the pathogens. But, this whole story has changed over the past 100 years, because, 100 years ago it was thought that you've had oral pathogens. Well, let's put fluoride in the drinking water. Let's put fluoride in the toothpaste. Let's throw an atomic bomb with chlorhexidine and antiseptic mouthwash and Listerines of the world and kill all the bacteria. And today we know that if you kill the microbiome and cause dysbiosis, it causes chronic disease. And that's what we're finding with things like fluoride in your toothpaste, fluoride in your drinking water, and using antiseptic mouthwash. It's killing the oral microbiome. It's leading to these opportunistic pathogenic bacteria. It's causing dysbiosis, decreasing nitric oxide production, and causing an increase in blood pressure. So what we've tried to do now over the past 15 years is, number one, let's figure out what the oral cavity needs to remineralize teeth, to prevent cavities, to prevent dysbiosis. And then now, through mapping this entire oral microbiome, we understand the good bacteria, what their job is, what their role is, and now we can put things in oral hygienic practices that support the microbiome. It doesn't kill it, supports it. And what we're finding is we can improve nitric oxide production, we can normalize blood pressure by targeting the oral microbiome, and improve systemic health, improve oral health, improve systemic health, just simply by targeting the oral cavity.
So you have a lozenge, and tell me how it works. I mean, give me the layperson's, obviously not the Sheldon Cooper version. Give me the layperson's version of how the lozenge works. Because I know for me, if I don't start seeing effects from something, I tend to I'll just quit doing that. I tend to fall off of the regimen. So share the underneath, like how does it actually fundamentally go into the body and make changes?
Well, I think an important consideration or revelation is that nitric oxide is a gas, right? It's a gas that's naturally produced. It's produced in the lining of the blood vessels. It's produced by bacteria, but once it's produced, it's gone in less than a second. So nitric oxide is not a pill you can swallow. It's not a gummy you can chew. And so a lot of these products out there that are targeted towards nitric oxide don't work. Not only do they not work, they can't work because they failed to understand the underlying biochemistry. So the whole evolution of this orally disintegrating tablet was, number one, we had to figure out how the human body makes nitric oxide. Number two, we had to understand what leads to the loss of its natural production. And then number three, how do we give nitric oxide back, this fleeting gas, at doses that recapitulate normal production and normal signaling? So that took about 15, 20 years of hardcore research to understand. And then in 2007, we published that nitric oxide is a hormone. So similar to other hormone replacement therapy like estrogen in women and testosterone in men, we actually give you the molecule, right? We give you nitric oxide gas. And so the only way to do this is through an orally disintegrating tablet that we control the nitric oxide release, we control the duration of its release. So when you put this lozenge in your mouth, it dissolves over 5 to 6 minutes. As this matrix is falling apart, we're liberating nitric oxide gas. And so if your body can't make nitric oxide, we do it for you. But the technology goes a step further because we understand what goes wrong in the enzyme that no longer able to produce nitric oxide. We fix the enzyme. And as you mentioned, it resides in the oral cavity. So it's selectively killing the pathogenic bacteria. It's improving the diversity of the good non-pathogenic commensal bacteria, and we're improving the body's ability to make nitric oxide on its own.
And so what does nitric oxide, and I apologize earlier, I said nitrous, and nitric oxide actually do in the body? Does it, I understand we're talking about bad bacteria. Does it go blow up those little guys, or what does it do in the body for you on a natural level?
Well, as part of our innate immune system, most pathogenic bacteria are sensitive to nitric oxide. So when our immune cells go and recognize an infection, those immune cells produce a lot of nitric oxide over a short period of time. That nitric oxide binds to the iron sulfur centers of the bacteria, which is their respiratory system, and basically shuts down their respiration. That's how it kills them. But it's outside of our immune system, in the cardiovascular system, nitric oxide is a vasodilator. So it's going to open up the blood vessels, improve oxygenation, nutrient delivery. But it's much more than that. It mobilizes our own stem cells. It activates our mitochondria to produce more energy, and it induces mitochondrial biogenesis. Each cell has more mitochondria generating more energy more efficiently. And then in terms of longevity, it activates an enzyme called telomerase, which then prevents our telomeres from getting shorter. So shorter telomeres, shorter lifespan, longer telomeres, longer lifespan. So that's just a short list of all the really foundational, fundamental kind of signaling that nitric oxide does in the body. But once you lose the ability to produce nitric oxide, it sets the stage for the rapid onset and progression of chronic disease.
As you were talking, I was kind of picturing when I was a young person and my mom would pour peroxide on a wound or something and it would fizz up and kind of have that reaction. Is that similar to how it functions in the body, or is it totally different?
Well, peroxide, our immune cells make peroxide too, and that's kind of how it kills bacteria. But, if you add hydrogen peroxide to a wound or a cut, it kills bacterial cells, but also kills human cells. So you have to be pretty judicious and selective on use like hydrogen peroxide. I think it's very effective if you have a fresh cut or scrape or wound to kill the infection, but you shouldn't apply peroxide every day to a wound because it kills human cells too. But similar to nitric oxide, our immune cells make hydrogen peroxide. Our immune cells make nitric oxide, and those are the antibacterial effects of our immune cells, to how it kills bacteria and even prevents virus from replicating.
So how do the free radicals tie into all of this? Because isn't that a really big component to it as well? Help me understand that.
Well, free radicals are what we call molecules that have an unpaired electron. And most free radicals, things like superoxide radical and hydroxyl radical, they scavenge electrons because they're looking for another electron to stabilize that unpaired electron. And so they're called electron stealers. And anything that steals an electron is what we call a powerful oxidant. So it causes rust, internal rust. So oxidation is a loss of electrons. If you have a lot of free radicals, oxygen radicals around, you steal electrons from other molecules, and you cause oxidation, oxidative stress, which is a hallmark of aging. But the interesting thing about nitric oxide is it's a free radical, but it's one nitrogen, one oxygen. And there's a polarity between that nitrogen and oxygen bond where nitric oxide likes to donate that electron. So it's an electron donating species. And then it's antioxidant because it scavenges, it reacts with hydroxyl radical or superoxide radical and neutralizes the oxidative stress we see when we're producing too much oxygen radicals.
It's
So,
kind of
and then,
interesting to think about our
yeah,
body like this. I mean, we see these things play out in nature all of the time, right? You can leave an aluminum can out, you can leave a piece of metal outside and watch what happens over time. You can leave a piece of food on the counter and watch how it rots, right? And to think that all those same processes are happening in our body and we just don't realize it because we don't see it until it's a rash or it's heart palpitations or it's whatever that starts to express externally.
yeah, look, that's why we have to maintain a proper redox balance. We have to have an unlimited source of electrons and limit the amount of oxidative stress. And that's what drives biology and biochemistry is, I think if we eat an inflammatory diet and we don't have good mitochondria and we're getting a lot of oxidative stress, it leads to advanced aging. But to the contrary, if we can eat an anti-inflammatory diet, if we can maintain optimal nitric oxide production and have optimal mitochondrial function, then we don't get oxidative stress. We age gracefully. The human body is regenerative by nature. It regenerates and we age gracefully and don't get chronic disease. And I think that should be the goal.
So, why is this not like, across the top of every news channel? Like, how is this not being spread as a key message to people? Why do you think that is? Why is it maybe so under the radar or just not public knowledge? What's happened there?
Well, in 1998, a Nobel Prize was awarded for the discovery of nitric oxide, a Nobel Prize in physiology or medicine. And that was, 27 years ago. Well, and then big pharma started developing nitric oxide based drug therapy. And they failed. They grossly failed because they used the wrong approach. So, because nitric oxide is not part of your diagnostics, it's not something we can pull blood and get a number like vitamin D and say, oh, you're low in nitric oxide, so let's treat it. And unfortunately, most allopathic physicians think you only treat what you can test. So, if you can't test it, it's not important. And some of the most important contributors to health and wellness are things we can't measure, such as nitric oxide. So that's number one. It's been very slow to developing diagnostics and safe and effective drug therapy. And we're hoping to change that. We've got drugs now we're developing through the FDA. The other problem is, all these companies out there selling dietary supplements, and they're calling it nitric oxide, but it's not nitric oxide. And so when people take these supplements that are targeted toward nitric oxide, it doesn't improve their nitric oxide status. They don't get a benefit. And that's why most physicians don't use dietary supplements, because the supplements are the wild, wild west. 74% of the supplements on the market don't even contain what's on the label. And in nitric oxide, it's even more complex because, you have to, what we do is completely different. It's based on 25 years of actual science and research and not trying to, throw things together in a pill or a bag and call it nitric oxide. And so the people don't get the benefit from it. There's nobody out there except people who take our product technology and, conversations like this that you and I are having to really provide a point of differentiation between what I do, what my companies do versus all these other charlatans out there that are defrauding their customers.
You bring up a really good point, which is I've been in the holistic health industry for a long time, and it can be incredibly confusing. And, my parents are of a generation where it's like, whatever the doc puts on the script is what I'm getting. And I'm not asking any questions and I'm not doing any further research. And then now I see them kind of coming around and, they'll stop off at my house and my mom will say, so what did you put in that juicer? What were the ingredients you put in there? And what is that plant-based medicine you said you were taking? And they're starting to ask questions and get curious about it. But I was on the opposite spectrum of kind of where they were. I kind of swung the pendulum the other way. I will say I'm a researcher by nature. It's what I like to do. But for a lot of people, I think they're just so busy trying to pay their mortgage that they don't have the time or the headspace. And I think that really dupes a lot of people. I do. I think they get stuck and it can be very confusing.
No, look, I mean, people go home, they turn on their TV and they see these companies advertising these magical beets and nitric oxide products, and they buy into that, and then they don't get the benefit from it because the products aren't based on any real science.
Right.
So the companies who are spending the most on marketing typically have the least amount of science because they have to continue to acquire a different customer because their customers buy it, they realize they don't get an effect, and they never buy it again.
Right.
So for companies like that to survive, they got to continue to go out and acquire new customers. The only way to do that is constantly advertise, spend millions and millions of dollars on advertising. To the contrary, if we can educate and inform people on what nitric oxide is, what products actually deliver nitric oxide, we typically don't have to, we have to educate and inform, But when people take our products, try our products, they see the benefit, they feel the benefits, they start to feel better, and they continue to buy the products because it provides benefit. Not only does it provide benefit, it's based on objective science, objective endpoints that we can see the blood vessels dilate, we can see blood pressure become normal, we can see an increase in number of stem cells in circulation, we can see an improvement in mitochondrial function, sexual function, cognitive function, athletic performance. And those are tangible, objective endpoints.
It's interesting because, when I think about even like the Indiana Jones movies, right? And the Holy Grail and all these different things, I mean, you're kind of describing a Holy Grail like product. It's like this thing that our bodies are missing or not producing like they used to. Why is that? Why is the human body lacking in something? Because I'm of the belief that we are spectacular in, you even said it about regenerating and these sorts of things. Like our body has the ability to do these things. Why has it been stripped? What is in our environment? What is in our world that is making it where we're lacking in this to begin with?
Well, we had to understand how the human body makes nitric oxide. So there's an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase. It's found in the lining of the blood vessels. That enzyme takes L-arginine, which is an amino acid, and through a 5-electron multi-step oxidation reaction creates nitric oxide gas. So over time, because of diet and lifestyle, really a high sugar, high carbohydrate diet leads to glycation of that enzyme, renders it dysfunctional. So we can no longer make nitric oxide through that pathway.
Got it.
Then the other pathway we and others discovered was through the oral microbiome. So if you have oral dysbiosis, if you have low salivary pH, it completely changes the ecology of the microbiome, increases nitric oxide production, blood pressure goes up. So then we ask, okay, what's causing dysbiosis? Number one, fluoride, because fluoride's an antiseptic. So fluoride's in most toothpaste. It's in 73% of the municipalities in the drinking water. That's number one. Number two is antiseptic mouthwash. 2 out of 3 Americans use mouthwash every day. And you see the commercials. This mouthwash kills 99.99% of the bacteria in your mouth.
They're not even lying about it.
They're proud of this. And it's deadly. It's killing you. And they're advertising it on TV. I mean, it blows my mind. And then the other thing are antacids. Completely shuts down nitric oxide production. 200 million prescriptions written for antacids every year, and 2 out of 3 Americans are taking an over-the-counter antacid. So all of those are disrupting the natural production of nitric oxide. So what we've tried to do is communicate the science and just make practical recommendations. Okay, get rid of fluoride. If there's fluoride in your drinking water, go buy a home filtration system, or contact your mayor, city council, and say, look, the data on fluoride the verdict is in. It provides no benefit and it's all risk. Lowers IQ by as much as 7 points in kids, causes hypothyroidism, and it's a neurotoxin. Why are we putting this in the drinking water? Then number two, get a non-fluoridated toothpaste. As you mentioned, I just launched a toothpaste 6 months ago because I wanted a non-fluoridated toothpaste, but the ones I was using still had things in there that seemed to be disrupting the microbiome. So I was forced to create my own toothpaste to target the oral microbiome, to target nitric oxide production, to improve the diversity of the oral microbiome and remineralize the teeth and leave your breath feeling mini fresh. And so we've accomplished that. Then the other thing is you have to get off antacids. If you're on antacids, you must figure out how to wean off of them, because there are people who've been on PPIs for 3 to 5 years, 40% higher incidence of heart attack, stroke, and Alzheimer's. These are deadly drugs. They should never be taken. So now once you start eliminating that and you stop eating anything that creates an increase in blood sugar, stop eating sugar, stop eating simple carbohydrates, get rid of grains, white foods, anything that leads to a spike in blood sugar, stop doing it.
I was the heartburn for lifer kind of person, and all the doctors here take this PPI, Nexium, whatever the different, you fill in the blanks. And I remember, feeling pretty hopeless about heartburn because I'd watch my dad and my grandma have Alka-Seltzer like every night, growing up. And actually, as I started to systemically change from inside out, what I was really putting in my body and all of that, unless I have a very intense psychologically stressing week, I have not had heartburn in years. I used to say I could drink nothing but water and have heartburn. And I realized, that is actually not a true statement if you're really taking a look fundamentally at what you're putting in your body and what you're exposing your body to environmentally. But when you realize that starts with the toothpaste and all of the products that are in your shower and what you're spraying on your countertop to clean it and all the different things that we're breathing in, it sounds kind of overwhelming at first, but at this point, I would never go back to the life I had because I
Right.
simply don't have the dis-ease that I had then, right? So it's so worth it to me, but I do think that for some people it can feel overwhelming at first. We recently had a fella on the podcast who was talking about it's kind of like a hydrogen, it's a hydrogen water system and how
Yeah.
that's such a foundational start. And he really had a lot of, like you, science on what they're doing. And it originated in Japan and they're doing some spectacular stuff. But I think that something as simple as your toothpaste, and I've recently come to find that even some of the quote fluoride free toothpaste I was using were not truly good for you. And that's when I learned about
Right.
nanohydroxyapatite and that. So I, recently have started back down the toothpaste and I've been fluoride free for like, I don't know, 9 years or something, right? So in terms of my toothpaste, but now I've had to revisit the toothpaste front, which was one of the things I found on your website. I was like, oh, this is fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's been an incredible product. And what's probably maybe 8 or 10 years ago, we published a report showing that if we took people that had used mouthwash, if people had good blood pressure, and we gave them mouthwash, we saw their blood pressure increase because we're destroying the microbiome, decreasing nitric oxide production. So when we launched the toothpaste, we thought, okay, can we do the opposite? Can we show the opposite? Can we take people with high blood pressure, get rid of fluoride, stop the antiseptic mouthwash, and then use this toothpaste to target the oral microbiome? Could we bring their blood pressure down? And what we're finding is the answer is yes. So simply by targeting the oral microbiome, improving nitric oxide production through this pathway, we can dilate blood vessels and bring blood pressure down. And when you think about the public health initiative and public health implications of this, high blood pressure is the number one driver of the number one killer of men and women worldwide. So if we can just switch and target the oral microbiome, switch to our toothpaste, and I'm launching a nitric oxide friendly mouth rinse in a couple of months, and then we can improve the diversity of the microbiome, improve nitric oxide production, and now we can impact the number one killer of men and women worldwide.
Well, I used to be like an every 6 month go in for my cleaning person. And I can honestly say for the past 2 or 3 years, I haven't even had to do that because I think a
Yeah.
combination of what I'm eating and then what I'm using in my mouth, it's not having that buildup. I mean, obviously I floss and brush every day and that, but I haven't had that. It was like day one of the 6 month period. I would be at the dentist, like, get it all out. And I'm realizing now that, like, wow, I haven't had to, aside from dealing with like an urgent tooth issue or something, I haven't even really had to go to the dentist, which I feel a little bad about. I think the
So don't
dental
feel bad.
industry.
Yeah, don't feel bad. I did the same thing. I went for a dental visit probably 3 months ago for the first time in 2.5 years. And so my
And they're like, your
dentist,
mouth looks
we,
great.
we haven't seen you in 2 years. And they look and do a full cleaning and they go, looks like we just cleaned your teeth yesterday. Your bacterial load is a 1, which is the best on the score. There was no tartar buildup. And they go, keep doing what you're doing. I go,
That,
well,
yeah, that's, I went in for a tooth thing and they put this rinse in my mouth and they're like, huh, you're fine. It's like,
yeah.
I clean bill of health. That's good. Could you fix the tooth though? So yeah, and there's so much coming out on that. I think that people are starting to get savvy. What's one piece of advice that you would give people that are maybe feeling very overwhelmed? As much as we tried to keep it on a very non-scientific level. What's one piece of advice you might give them for like how to start even looking into this?
Take it step by step. Once a take it week by week. Week one, eliminate something that you're doing. And number two, start doing something that you haven't been doing. So number one, I would, if you start this week and just stop using mouthwash, and then start exercising. 8, 10, 12 minutes of high intensity interval training, or 20, 30 minutes of brisk walking or moderate physical exercise a day. And then as you start to, it seems overwhelming, but just take it step by step. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. I think that's the perspective you have to start with. I think what we're finding is that if you start to improve your body's ability to make nitric oxide, you're going to see the effects, you're going to feel the effects. But for me, I always tell people to start with an 18-hour fast because that's cost savings. If you do an 18-hour fast every day, only eat between 12 and 6, and then stop eating after 6, don't eat until noon the next day, that completely resets your metabolism. You're going to lose weight, you're going to feel better. If you have insulin resistance or diabetes, it's going to completely reverse it. And then you're going to feel better, you're going to feel motivated to start doing these other things a little at a time. But that, to me, that's been the biggest.
I love that. The body has that time and space to go into autophagy and kind of clean up and do all the work
True.
that it needs to do. We definitely intermittent fast every day, except for maybe on the weekends. Occasionally we'll have breakfast early or something like that. For the most part, we live in that space. And what's interesting is I found I wasn't even as hungry anymore. Like it's
No,
just
it's
over.
remarkable, right?
It's like I'm not even that hungry. And we do a lot of juicing. So, we usually start with some sort of a ginger blast or something like that in the morning, which kind of sets the tone for the day anyway. And I find too that with that, when I'm getting all the nutrients that I need via juicing, I'm not really that hungry either. Like it seems that
Yeah.
my body's like, you're good. Well, this has been
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. What is the website that people can go to learn about, in particular, your product, which is not a phony like so many that we see out there?
Yeah, for product technology, it's n101.com. That's the letter N, number one, letter O, number one.com. We've got, we make an orderly disintegrating tablet. We make a fermented beet powder for pre-workout and energy. I created a whole skincare line of product for aesthetics and beauty. And then, we have our toothpaste, and then stay tuned for our mouth rinse. But really, I encourage people to get educated. And so I usually send people to my YouTube page, Dr. Nathan S. Bryan, nitric oxide. Just get informed, get educated on nitric oxide. And then I'd highly recommend my latest book, The Secret of Nitric Oxide, Bring the Science to Life. It tells the story of nitric oxide, what it is, how it's produced, what you may be doing to disrupt its natural production, and then you can, take the necessary steps to prevent the loss of this molecule. You can follow me on Instagram, Dr. Nathan S. Bryan, LinkedIn, and I'm searchable on most engines.
Love that. And as always, we do include everything in the show notes. I am very excited about your mouthwash because that is an area I have not had anything for years because I refuse. So this is very exciting. I'll be definitely up on that first. Would you mind showing your book cover one more time? It was a little bit
Yeah.
blurry. Yeah.
It's called The Secret of Nitric Oxide, Bringing the Science to Life. It's published by Brick Tower Press. My agent, Alan Morrell. It's done, we launched it on Fox and Friends back in February, so it's a must read. Obviously, I have a very strong personal bias. It's gotten acclaimed. It's been an Amazon bestseller. But yeah, I think it'd be a worthwhile read just to understand what this molecule is and really to be able to differentiate the science from product technology so you can be an informed and educated consumer.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to visit with you, and I'm sure we will connect again soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
The views expressed in this podcast aren't necessarily those of the Sky Talk Doc. They're here to challenge your thinking and inspire growth. Until next time, blue skies and tailwinds.